I'm really excited about this panel. We have 3 people from other cities that are doing a lot of cool stuff, and then we've got the mayor's chief of staff here to tell us about what Indianapolis is doing. I'm going to give you their bios. It's a little different than some of the panels that we've had so far. So we have Lisa Gedgaudas, raise your hand over here. She's the program director at Create Denver. She's been over there for 10 years. She serves as the administrator. It's a city-initiated program with the Denver Arts and Venues that showcases Denver's talented and dynamic creative community. Say hi to Lisa. We've got Steve Sternshine. He's currently the managing director at Herd Presents, one of the premier independent promoters in the Texas region. They operate Empire Control Room and Garage, which is an award-winning music venue in Austin, as well as The Parish. He's also the co-founder of Prism FM, which is a platform that provides end-to-end business process management for concert promotion and venue operations. And he's a founding member and director of the Red River Cultural District Merchants Association. Welcome, Steve. We also have Tammy Hurt. She's an entrepreneur and music industry advocate. She's also a rock drummer. She's the managing partner at Placement Music and Endeavor Sound. It's 2 boutique entertainment firms. They specialize in custom music scoring, post-audio, and all forms of media. She's also the co-founder of Georgia Music Partners, the nonprofit behind the passage of the Georgia Music Investment Act, which is incentivizing music, which is really cool. She's going to tell us a little bit about it. She also serves on the Recording Academy of Atlanta board for the last 14 years, and she's on her 3rd term as national trustee and co-chair for the Recording Academy's National Membership Committee. Welcome, Tammy. We also have Thomas Cook. Thank you. On election day, we managed to get the mayor's chief of staff here, so that's huge. Of course, Josh and I just completely overlooked the fact that it was election day. And
so did I.
Every single public official we talked to, they're like, but that's election day. And I was like, ugh. So we got Thomas here. He's the chief of staff for Mayor Joe Hogsett. He oversees a diverse portfolio of administration initiatives. He focuses on economic and community development. But prior to being at the city, he served as the One City Indy Transition Director and was deputy chief of staff for the city of Lawrence and an aide to the United States Attorney General's office. Welcome, Thomas. So since we have such a geographically diverse panel, it's going to be a little different, or maybe we won't take as many questions back and forth, but I want them all to be able to present a little bit about what they're doing. They all are a little different than what we have going on in Indianapolis, but they're all really exciting. But first, I want to take a minute. Where's Michael Kaufman? Michael Kaufman. I want to everybody give Michael Kaufman a round of applause. He drives a lot of cultural investment in the city. He's behind the scenes on a lot of things, and ultimately he's the person that made this happen. Speaking of the person that made this happen, Josh Baker. Everybody give Josh another round of applause. He's put a lot into this event, and it's really great to see it coming up together. So, all right, speaking of local, I want to start with Thomas. So, Indianapolis, we had the new localism book that came out by Bruce Katz. Talks about Indy's public and private partnerships. I don't know if you give us a little bit of history about what we've done in Indianapolis.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think a lot of you are probably from the area, but what I've found is that those that are most often sort of championing cultural economics and sort of cultural development in our city actually aren't from here. They've been transplants. It's I think, a really weird thing about Indianapolis is that we're really attracting a lot of exuberant people from elsewhere in the country who, once they get here, are really excited about developing our culture. And so, you know, one thing I think that's always important to remind people about Indianapolis is we're kind of an odd city from a cultural standpoint, in that we were really founded as a much smaller geographic city. If you think of the city of Indianapolis as a tic-tac-toe board with 9 townships, the old city limits was largely the center square. And in the 1960s, the decision was made by the state legislature with the support of the mayor, who then went on to become Senator Lugar, to institute what was called Unigov. And so the whole tic-tac-toe board became the city, large portions of which, even to this day, are farmland. And so we ended up with a city where the old city limits, which really had been sort of the center of our culture, the center of our cultural development, was experiencing the changing demographics that all urban areas in the 1960s were experiencing, but instead of having that sort of be highlighted like we've seen sort of in the post-industrial era, in the Clevelands and the Detroits of the world, it was almost not noticed by the world writ large because the city limits suddenly began to encompass the suburbs. And the end result of that is that the city sort of from an economic standpoint didn't experience the downturn that a lot of our neighboring Midwest cities did. We survived, but we survived at a time where our city urban core were really the cultural capital that had been built up over 50 or 60 years dissipated. So you ended up with a city that was there, that the population was there, the economics was great, but the heart and soul of many of our neighborhoods had disappeared. And sort of beginning in the 1980s, there was this great spirit of public-private partnership that really took hold, led by Mayor Hudnut at the time. And it was all based around sort of single-issue corporate public-private partnerships. And so obviously the most notable was our dedication to sports and the sports economy and the bringing of the Pan Am Games. And in a lot of respects, Mayor Hudnut, his whole mantra was that downtown Indianapolis, the old city limits, Naptown, the sleepy little place where people worked but nobody lived, had to be invested in. And it was invested in culturally, things like the canal, things like downtown beautification. And his mantra was that everyone who had moved out to the suburbs, which is still within the city, but really was prefab homes that were constructed on the outskirts of the county, you can't be a suburb of nothing. And that's what he consistently would go around the city telling people. 25 years later, when I was helping Mayor Hogsett run, he ran around saying that there's a corollary to that, which is after so much investment in our downtown and seeing places like Fountain Square and Fletcher Place sort of reap the benefits of that investment through the cultural trail and other things, we're now sort of confronting the corollary, which is that you can't be a downtown of nothing. And how do we continue to take the cultural development we've seen in downtown in very specific ways and start to move that out into neighborhoods that may have lacked an identity entirely or have lost their identity over 30 or 40 years. And so we're really in our infancy of doing what I think a lot of the panelists up here are going to be talking about. And it's an exciting time because I think for the first time in a long while, there's sort of a sense of confidence in Indianapolis that we can look at things that other cities around the country are doing and not just wish and wonder, if that could ever happen here. We're sort of at the implementation phase of a lot of these things. And so that's been something the mayor's been passionate about. We've sort of instituted a view that economic development and community development are not separate and distinct entities. It's the same thing. And so that means picking and choosing priorities. It means assuming that not every job times salary equals X we don't have egalitarian economic development anymore. A warehouse job that pays $15 an hour on the edge of the suburb is different than somebody who's making $15 an hour downtown in a cultural generating institution where you're going to have capital going into a neighborhood, and that job may be servicing a local resident who otherwise couldn't work near where they live. So, we're tackling all these issues. I think the chamber deserves a lot of credit, as does Michael, for leading these issues. I'm really excited to be on this panel today because these concepts of inclusive growth, of neighborhood investment, it's something that our administration believes passionately in, but we're still in the information gathering, sort of cross-pollination stage where we need ideas and we need them to be captured by people like you in this room and brought to us. And the last thing I'd say, just because it is election day, is realize that political actors are inherently selfish and self-interested. I say that with all due respect, including to my boss. But it is election day, right? If you go out and talk to local officials about these issues, remember that you have to put it in terms of what they process. And I think you'll have a lot of success talking about these issues if you realize that you can't necessarily go in and tell your story and assume it's going to resonate with them. Listen to what they think is important, and 9 times out of 10, what you're talking about is what they're talking about. They just haven't realized it yet. And you've got to meet them there halfway. And we've seen that a lot with our city county council and the movement we've made. We've seen that with our corporate community. But not having a good idea is in and of itself not a guarantee of success. You really have to approach local government as you would any other institution. Find out what they care about and then figure out how your story can fit within that narrative. And really excited to hear what we have going on in other places in the country, and happy to keep talking to you guys over the course of the day.
Cool, thank you, Thomas. So we're going to go over to Lisa first. So I was really excited to see that we had Denver here, and Lisa's a great person to represent Denver, obviously. But so for me, we've heard from other people that have come to town and said, hey, Indianapolis looks like what Denver looked like 10 years ago, right? Like the start of our cultural birth. So they were very strategic about how they grew things. And the city was heavily invested in the arts community. Lisa, can you give us just a little bit of a rundown about the Denver music strategy, how it came about, and what you do there?
Yeah, hi everybody. I've been in your town less than 24 hours and it's been really lovely. I'll back out a little bit and say that, so yeah, I do work with the city of Denver. My job is Create Denver. I'm the only one that has this role. So one person trying to support all creative industries within the city of Denver is challenging. So I would say one of the other things to note is that we work a lot with the state of Colorado, so we also have Colorado Creative Industries. So we have an incredible alignment on affordable housing for artists, sustainable cultural districts, a music strategy. We're both doing that at the same time together, and we do our research together as well. So all of that creative industries data or music industries data, we work with UC Denver. We work with a college, we work with the students there, they get involved. They just started a Music Cities class 3 years ago, and now we place those students and they start their own businesses. It's pretty incredible. Denver Arts and Venues is kind of a unique agency. We are outside of the city budget completely. Again, on the art side, we run the public art and Create Denver. On the venue side, we run Red Rocks, you may have heard of that, and the Performing Arts Complex and the Convention Center, and a few other buildings. So we've been doing music strategy research for the last 10 years. I like to say it takes 10 years to get somewhere. And we re-upped this strategy. It's about to be released the first week of June. Happy to share it with everybody. But in doing that kind of work, we have like the qualitative and quantitative data. So we had to go out into the community and interview nearly 90 people, if not more, to say what's really going on in the community. And with that, we're coming out with some funding for the first time for music advancement. We have about $80,000. The city gave me $50,000. I promised I'd get it matched with public-private partnerships, which is also working really well. I think there's two goals there: sustainable money into the community immediately. And that's not necessarily recording and touring. There's not free money for that right now. But these grants are really meant to go into more social advancement. So arts education, or how are you changing your community? How are you talking about music? A lot of what we've been talking about here today is very industry heavy, very industry related, and I understand that, but there's a whole nother side to this that is music is an agent for change in a lot of other directions, and that's where the money should be going. That's the most leverageable dollar. So on the other side of that, I'm piloting this, right? So try and pilot stuff. You can get away with a lot more. So we're piloting this grant. We have a music advisory panel that we're piloting. It's not a music commission. It's not a board. And it's highly representational of the diversity of Denver and the genres, not just music, but again, that whole ecosystem that we keep saying. And at the end of the day, I realized we work for venues, so why music? Well, Red Rocks is our bloodline. If you buy a $9 Coors Light at Red Rocks, it goes back to the arts. So we eat what we kill, or we kill what we eat. I can't remember what the saying is. So it also goes to like a new septic system at Red Rocks if you need it. But I think ultimately, if we can glean on places like Canada and Factor, who do give those grants out to things like this, that's a lot more money, and that's radio money. It's a very different model. But if Red Rocks is sustainable in our own agency, then I feel like we need to be gleaning into some kind of endowment mode with that funding. So start with $50,000 and grow that. It's the first year, so we'll see where it takes us.
So that was the Denver Music Advancement Fund?
Yeah. Sorry. I'm not going to answer your questions directly.
You're good. Next I want to go to Tammy. We've only got 40 minutes. I wish we had an hour for each of these presenters. So like I said, Tammy is with Georgia Music Partners. Tammy, can you tell us a little bit about the music incentive, how it was tied in with the film incentive, and how that came about and what you do there?
8 years in 2 minutes, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
You got 10.
Absolutely. So Georgia Music Partners came to be out of the chapter of the Recording Academy Atlanta. And there would be no Georgia Music Partners if it weren't for the Recording Academy. I had a colleague of mine, when the film tax incentives in Georgia that are wildly successful, when those went into effect in 2008, he had a tech component to his music licensing platform, and went to the Department of Economic Development and said, hey, I see these great incentives. How does my music business take advantage of this? And they said, well, you can't really. I mean, unless you're creating music for film that's shot here in Georgia, you can't take advantage of this. So we really got to work. We were very excited about the potential of what that film incentive might mean for music, because a film is a whole film. It's not just writing a script, and it's not just film production. There's also post-production, which is obviously where music lives. So we set out to try to level the playing field to get a seat at the table for music. It was a long haul. There were some individuals, a small group of very dedicated individuals that actually created our film incentive. And it was then picked up in the broader, wider sense by Department of Economic Development statewide. And we, as that continued to grow, we, kept carrying the flag for music, saying, you know what, we need our own incentive. So last year at 11:59, on the very last day of the session, our bill passed. And we have a statewide music incentive standalone. It is in 3 parts. It is scoring, recording, and pre-tour live rehearsals. So, these are meant for the bigger productions, larger tours, because we want to see how the ecosystem, we have a wildly successful film incentive in Georgia. It's $9.5 billion of impact in the state, and everything is filmed there. We've seen how that has grown the ecosystem of, wardrobe people and builders and electrical companies, and we know the exact same thing could be done with music. So it was easy for us. We had a governor that was pro incentives, which obviously made this possible. The incentives had previously passed before this governor got into office, but he also supported what we were doing ultimately. So we were able to say, look, here's proof of concept with the film incentive. We want to do the same thing for music. So we had a lot of things working to our benefit. I will say, and this has come up in a couple of conversations since we've all been here, which is what we learned along the way was to be better storytellers. We had to, we were saying, kind of to your point, we were saying what we wanted, and we didn't realize this really for the legislators was about jobs. So that was sort of the key nugget that pushed things along. But we also learned that we needed to show, not tell. So we did a couple of really cool things with legislators. Beyonce was in town at our arena, and brought the legislators down and walked them backstage, and they saw 300 people setting up chairs, and they saw 250 people setting up sound and lights, and then they saw the tour buses and the trucks, and it became real. We were talking about, look at this economic impact, that something like this, like if you had a band in town, to rehearse for a month, this would be happening all the time. Very similarly, we put them in a recording studio. So it's amazing when those of us who are musicians, you know what that feels like when you get the opportunity to make music with people, and especially people that don't have any talent whatsoever, to put them into, it was Christmas time, and we had, all-star band of, great musicians that played with everyone, and went into the studio and recorded a Christmas song, and they did backup vocals, hand claps, and played percussion. And they were, their own rock stars at Christmas time when they showed their family what they had done with all of these great people, but it made sense to them then. Like, oh, that's an engineer, and oh, that's a producer, and this is how it's done. So, again, those 2 big takeaways for us were, tell a better story and show them, don't tell them.
Awesome. Thank you, Tammy. So now we're going to move on to Steve. Austin, they have a little bit of music down there, right? There's a small festival somebody might have heard of down there. Give us the history of the Red River Cultural District, how it came about, how it works today, and maybe how South by Southwest impacts that.
Okay. So So the Red River Cultural District was formed in 2013, and I think, I'm going to echo some of the points that have been made so far, in terms of having, the reason the Cultural District was formed really came about from a small group of, concerned individuals, both, on the music side of things and also on the public policy side of things. So, South by Southwest's leadership was a big part of driving this change, because the existence of a number of stages and live music venues was kind of critical to the success of that event that I'm sure some of you know about. But the process, fast forward to today, where we've had a ton of success implementing policies to support and enhance the local music economy and the district. It started with the creation of a district. That was just a planning kind of thing. From there, we, with the help of the city and the mayor's office was actually initially very supportive. We founded, the Cultural District founded an association that brought together all of the businesses that are in this district, which is about 6 blocks in downtown Austin, adjacent to the Waller Creek. That's why it's called Red River. And we structured the district, or we structured the organization in a way, to kind of put forth 3 main things. The first being, preserving and enhancing the cultural elements of the district, bringing more people into the district, because especially outside of the South by Southwest season, their foot traffic and enhancing the economic success is important, and then improving the quality of working life for all the folks in the district was a big part of why these were the things that we all could agree on. And if you can imagine, I know there's a number of folks out here. When we started this process, much to the point of the MVT rep earlier, a lot of us, we're very competitive with one another, and it took getting into a room and really talking to realize that there are a lot of common issues that if we didn't work together to address, we could lose that live music capital of the world moniker really quickly. And the things that happened in London were kind of also, fresh in our mind. We were watching that go down, and as Austin grew, the developmental pressures that we were facing, were getting greater and greater. And we have had a number of issues with, residential and hotel projects going up and causing, local live music venues to have to close their doors or, modify the way that they acted. So, there was a lot of pressure from those things that, forced us to organize. And so I think, the situation is a little different because there was a ton of culture already happening in this area, but, it was kind of disparate. There wasn't an organization to support it. But the first step is really kind of bringing everybody together into a room and having that conversation where you realize that there's commonalities. And so once we had created the district and then created the association to kind of advocate on behalf of the district, we began about a 3-year process of telling stories and educating city council members, the city manager, and the teams of folks in the economic development department about like you said, again, on the one hand, we're telling a story about why music is so important, but reframing that as a jobs issue and an economic issue really is what kind of moved the needle for all of these folks. And I think Austin is probably special in the sense that there is this just tremendous, like almost every person you run into on the street, is going to identify themselves as a music lover. So politically, I think there was a lot of, it was a little easier for us to get things, to get into these meetings in the first place because everybody wanted to be able to say, oh, we helped the local music economy. The challenge was getting that to be more than just a soundbite and actually having a tangible impact on that community. And so, just kind of raising the flag as an organization and saying, hey, we're here and we actually know about music and how it works in this town. And if you're thinking about doing something, why don't you talk to us about it, and we'll give you, the best advice that we can. So there's also a pretty good support system throughout the city at this point. There's a music office, which kind of like oversees and provides an internal advocacy route for both artists and venues and anybody else in the industry looking for, to navigate, the bureaucracy, which can be difficult at times. There's a music commission, which is appointed, it's appointed by each council member appoints, one member of the commission, and they opine on, basically anything that they want to. They feel like that kind of like, has a music related, tilt. And at the end of the day, like, again, it's just, when, for example, we recently just in the Red River district were able to, we have a lot of, I'm not sure how much outdoor music is here in Indianapolis, but in Austin there's a ton of outdoor music venues. So sound ordinance is a big issue for a lot of us. I have an outdoor music venue, and I'm literally like on the right side of the street. There's a 2 a.m. curfew, and on my side of the street, it's midnight, at the latest, and sometimes 10:30. So we spent a bunch of time as a group advocating to increase the live music hours, and what we did was we created a pilot program, and we, over the course of a year, did a whole bunch of sound monitoring and testing to make sure there weren't any, real nuisance issues there. And we also provided a ton of economic data to show that with these extra hours, we were actually impacting the local music economy significantly. And about a week ago, we just got that pilot program, or those extended hours, finalized, in the code. So big victory for us. Took about 5 years to get to that point. But, the point, I guess the lesson there is, organization, storytelling, framing things in an economic sense and in a job creation sense, and just being present for all these conversations that are happening as, as advocates and as the folks to go to for, music-related issues. So there's an organization called Music Venue Alliance that is actually modeled after the Music Venue Trust. And Mark David, who's the founder of that organization, helped us to set that up. And there's a really rich group of when I say rich, I don't mean like financially rich, I mean like there are many different nonprofit organizations that have arisen that all have various, missions that are related to helping the music community to survive, whether it's from a perspective of an artist that needs health insurance. There's a group called HAM, Health Alliance for Austin Musicians. There's substance abuse help from SIMS. The Clifford Antone Foundation provides grants to struggling, starving artists to get through, to pay their rent and that sort of thing. So it really is a combination of individuals who are on a mission, and also a city government and a mayor, and a mayor that really cares about this issue. That has been what's created the success for us. And I think, I guess the last thing you asked about South by and the impact that it has on our community. So South by Southwest, for those of you who don't know, it's a 2-week-long event that happens every year in Austin in March. And it brings down about 250,000 people, visitors to the city. About 2,000 artists perform on hundreds of different shows, on hundreds of different stages. So it's a really massive citywide event. And the growth of South by Southwest, in a lot of ways, kind of mirrors the growth of Austin as a city. And what it's allowed us to do as a music community is really kind of like it makes it viable for every downtown bar and club to have a stage. because during that 2 weeks of time, you can economically justify that. But more importantly, what it does is it allows us to, operate year round. So the dough that we bring in from those 2 weeks from that, that from folks from out of town, that really subsidizes a year's worth of programming for us. I'd say probably 50% or more of the music businesses that exist in Austin probably wouldn't be there if South by Southwest were for some reason to go away. And so while South by is a very Austin specific event, I think that, the opportunity or the idea of having, a kind of cultural focal point event that, can bring together your whole community is, I think, almost essential to, being in a position to not just, throw a bunch of money from, bed tax or something into the cultural community. Like, this is an organic way of generating that sort of thing. So it's a combination of things that would need to happen. I think I covered it.
Yeah,
all.
I mean, like I said, all of these panelists could talk for a whole day about the efforts that their city are doing. So they're going to be here for the rest of the day. Please go up and ask them questions about what they're doing. We have an invaluable resource here. So there's a lot that we can learn from them. I just want to say, we're short on time, but I just want to say real quick. So 2 years ago, the Indy Chamber commissioned Michael Coffin to do a cultural economy study for us. That led directly to about a year ago, Kaufman and I talking about this cool event called Music Cities Conference. We should probably send some people there. We put together a delegation that included Josh Baker. We went in October. We had our minds blown by the things that other people were doing, cities that we compete with directly for economic development projects, the real impact that we see as a city, and they have this robust programs in other states we're competing with, and we, to some extent, aren't even in the game. So this is the beginning of a conversation. This is not the end. This event is meant to be the beginning of you taking what you learned here and bringing it out to your communities. And I thank you for being here, and please take what you've learned today and continue this conversation. So thank you very much. Thanks to all of our panelists. Make sure you talk to them afterwards. We do have time. Shane says we have time. He's sticky on time. So we have time for a couple questions, though. If anybody has, I'm sure somebody has questions for these panelists.
I have a question about the noise ordinances that you're trying to work through in Austin, and how that might impact in the residential area as you build a more robust music scene, the value of residences, the increase in value of the residences in that area for property values.
Okay, I think just to repeat the question, you asked me to talk about the impact on the noise ordinance on residential areas and property values around music venues. Is that
Positive correlation, yes, between residents' property values in an area that becomes kind of a cultural hub for live music, and how it benefits that community as a result of improving the live music scene in that area.
Okay, so actually I would say, so there's, in the Red River District, there are a number of new hotel properties, and there's a couple of condo communities as well. And when, and all of these, the folks who, especially the condo community kind of, initially had some difficulty, they kind of put the condo up in the middle of all these venues. And the initial group that was managing the property, right, they didn't let the people who were moving in there know that there was live music happening. They kind of like pushed that under the rug. And as a result, there were a lot of complaints, and there was a lot of animosity, particularly between Stubbs, which is across the street from these residents. So literally there's like a 3,000 cap outdoor amphitheater pointing at these condos, right? And they didn't talk about that in their marketing docs. So there was a bunch of problems with that initially, but what happened was a different managing company came in and started to market the property as, hey, come live in the center of the live music capital of the world, right in the middle of the action. It's gonna be loud. If you don't like that, go live somewhere else. And what happened as a result, now they're at 100% occupancy, the rents are going up every year, and they're doing great, and they're part of our organization and one of our greatest supporters. So at the same time, you know, again, when the hotel properties that went up kind of first came to town, there was some, you know, friction between, you know, the folks. There's a Hotel Indigo, Holiday Inn, and Hyatt House now, and this all went up in the past 2-3 years. So like, again, to frame kind of the concern that we had, that kind of underpinned forming the Merchant Association and the district organization, was what would happen once these hotels were built and people started to get upset about the noise level. And again, what had to happen was, as long as there was a clear communication on the part of the property managers that this is what you were kind of buying into, the level of complaints was down to a point where, really, basically these folks are able to sell these rooms specifically because of where they're at. So, and we're seeing also, like, in other areas of Austin, there's little music hubs on the east side, South Austin, and all of these locations are like, really what's happening is a couple of cultural businesses are coming in and anchoring, the redevelopment of these areas. So folks want to be in a walkable distance from a great place to eat and drink and hear live music. So as soon as something like that goes up, everything around those areas sees like a little bit of growth. I would say, like, in Indianapolis, and you guys are a sports town, so I'm sure there's plenty of familiarity with the impact that an arena or a sports stadium has on the surrounding area. I would argue that the music impact is an even more organic way to generate the increase in property values, that because there's less of a footprint from a live music venue, especially maybe an indoor live music venue as opposed to an outdoor one. But it seems like, at least in Austin, that's been the case. And I think, just to add on the other side of things, part of this pilot program that we undertook over the past year, there were a number of neighborhood associations, not directly adjacent to the district, but within, I'd say, a few miles of the district, that were basically concerned about noise that they were hearing that was traveling up the creek and bothering them at night. And what we were able to do was we put sound monitoring systems out in those areas and at the venues, and we were able to show that the noise from traffic on the highway was louder than the music that they were allegedly hearing. I mean, it was audible, but not to the extent that it was creating a nuisance. And so I think there was like a lot of, and throughout the process, we also engaged with those communities and said, hey, how can we do a better job of managing and mitigating this sound? We're here to do that. We don't want to, be bad neighbors, but we also have an important mission that we're on, and so we hope you can respect that. And just being in a position to have that dialogue, which hadn't happened before, changed the tenor of the conversation tremendously. And like I said, obviously it's been, a great success. I hope that answers your question.
That's it. Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody, for coming in town.